Have you ever looked at an old car from the 1950s and thought, what on earth were they thinking? Because the 1950s were a decade where car designers had unlimited budgets, absolutely zero safety regulations, and apparently nobody in the room brave enough to say, hey, maybe that's a terrible idea. From nuclear-powered engines to actual toilets in the back seat, this decade produced some of the most absurd, impractical, and downright stupid car features in automotive history. Today, we're counting down 25 of the most ridiculous ones you've probably never even heard of. If you enjoy this kind of content, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get right into it. Number 25. The dashboard record player. Picture this. It's 1956. You're cruising down the highway in your brand new Chrysler, and you want to hear your favorite tunes. Chrysler had an idea. They installed an actual record player right inside the dashboard. Called the Highway Hi-Fi, this marvel of misguided engineering played specially made 7-inch records while driving. Sounds great in theory. But every single bump in the road sent the needle skipping, and we're talking about 1950s American roads, which were basically obstacle courses compared to what we have today. The system only played special Chrysler-branded records licensed through Columbia, so you couldn't even use your own collection. And flipping the record to side B while driving at speed? Absolute nightmare. The concept lasted about 2 years before Chrysler quietly shelved it and pretended it never happened. The idea of portable music in your car was genuinely brilliant. The execution was just about 50 years too early. The technology simply wasn't there, and the American highway system wasn't exactly vinyl-friendly. Chrysler sold the player for about $200 as an option, which was serious money in the 50s. For that price, you got a device that worked perfectly, as long as your car never moved. Number 24. Push-button transmission. In 1956, Chrysler decided that traditional gear levers were old-fashioned relics. The future, they declared with full confidence, was push buttons. They rolled out push-button gear selectors across their entire lineup, including Plymouth, Dodge, DeSoto, Chrysler, and Imperial. Instead of shifting with a lever, drivers pressed buttons for drive, reverse, and neutral. It felt incredibly futuristic, like something from a science fiction film. But here's the problem. The buttons were placed on the left side of the dashboard, and there was no park button initially. Chrysler had to add a separate lever just for parking. Mechanics despised working on the cable systems connecting the buttons to the transmission because they were finicky and prone to failure. The Edsel took things even further by mounting its push buttons directly on the steering wheel hub, which meant drivers would accidentally shift gears while trying to honk the horn. The entire push-button fad lasted roughly a decade before every single manufacturer quietly went back to the lever. Sometimes the simplest solution really is the best. Number 23. Dagmar bumpers. Now this one is genuinely bizarre. Throughout the 1950s, American car manufacturers developed a peculiar obsession with chrome bumper guards, named after a buxom early 50s television personality called Dagmar. These conical, bullet-shaped chrome protrusions sat on the front bumpers of Cadillacs, Buicks, Mercurys, and Lincolns, getting progressively bigger and more pronounced as the decade rolled on. By 1957, they had gotten so absurdly large that Cadillac added black rubber tips to them, which earned the genuinely unfortunate nickname pasties. The really stupid part? These things were supposed to protect the car in minor collisions, but because they were rigid chrome-mounted inboard of the headlights, a direct impact actually transferred force straight to the car's frame, causing more localized and expensive damage than a standard bumper would have. They were purely decorative, completely impractical, and a genuine hazard to pedestrians walking past parked cars. They disappeared by the early 60s, and absolutely nobody missed them. Number 22. The Edsel's horse collar grill. When Ford invested a staggering $250 million developing the Edsel in 1957, they wanted a car that looked like absolutely nothing else on the road. Well, mission accomplished. The Edsel's front grille featured a vertical oval shape that was supposed to look bold and distinctive. Instead, it became the most mock design element in automotive history. Critics compared it to a toilet seat. Time magazine described it as an Oldsmobile sucking on a lemon. The original oval was actually meant to be much smaller, but engineers discovered the smaller version didn't allow enough airflow to cool the engine. So they kept making it bigger until it consumed the entire front face. Ford designers later admitted the original concept actually looked decent before all the unfortunate revisions. Ford hemorrhaged roughly $350 million on the Edsel before killing it after just 3 model years. To this day, the name Edsel is shorthand in business schools around the world for a product launch gone spectacularly and publicly wrong. Number 21. Excessive tail fins. Look, everyone knows about tail fins, but what most people don't realize is just how completely absurd they became by the end of the decade. It started innocently enough in 1948 when Cadillac's styling boss Harley Earl added small fin-like curves to the rear fenders, inspired by the P-38 Lightning fighter plane. But then competition kicked in. Every manufacturer wanted bigger fins than the other guy. By 1959, the Cadillac Eldorado's fins looked like actual jet stabilizers, complete with sharp points and twin bullet-shaped taillights sticking out like rocket exhausts. They added absolutely nothing aerodynamically. Plymouth even tried to claim their fins were stabilizers, reducing crosswind steering corrections by 20%, which was complete and utter nonsense. These massive metal appendages added weight, increased manufacturing costs, and became genuine safety hazards. Lawsuits emerged in the 60s after pedestrians, including children, were injured by the razor-sharp fins of parked cars. The fad collapsed almost overnight once the 60s arrived. Number 20. The Dodge La Femme. In 1955, some advertising genius at Dodge asked the question, "How do we get women to buy our cars?" And the answer they came up with was breathtakingly tone-deaf, even by 1950s standards. The Dodge La Femme was a custom Royal Lancer painted in heather rose and sapphire white, featuring pink rosebud tapestry seats. It came with a matching pink calfskin purse stored behind the passenger seat, stocked with a compact mirror, lipstick case, and cigarette lighter. Behind the driver's seat sat another compartment holding a matching rain cape, rain bonnet, and umbrella. The marketing brochure actually declared the car was made by special appointment to Her Majesty, the American woman. Fewer than 2,500 La Femme sold over 2 years. Turns out, women in the 50s didn't actually want a patronizing pink car with a matching handbag. They just wanted a reliable, well-built car. Dodge dropped the whole concept for 1957 and never went back to it. The La Femme remains one of the most cringe-worthy examples of tone-deaf automotive marketing in history, though surviving examples are now worth a small fortune to collectors who appreciate the sheer audacity of it all. Number 19. The Wraparound Windshield. When panoramic wraparound windshields debuted in 1954 on GM models, they were marketed as the ultimate in futuristic visibility. The glass curved dramatically around the front corners of the car, theoretically giving drivers a much wider field of view. In practice, they were a disaster. The extreme curvature created terrible optical distortion at the edges, making objects appear warped and distances harder to judge accurately. The thick chrome pillars needed to support that curved glass actually created bigger blind spots than conventional windshields. The corners trapped heat like a greenhouse, making the car sweltering in summer. If your windshield cracked, replacing that custom curved glass cost a small fortune, and the design leaked at the corners because sealing curved glass with 50s technology was nearly impossible. Despite all of these problems, every single manufacturer copied the look because it screamed modern. Style triumphed over substance for an entire decade. Number 18. The Edsel Teletouch Transmission. As if the Edsel's infamous grille wasn't enough, Ford also blessed it with one of the most bewildering transmission systems ever conceived. The Teletouch drive put push buttons in the center of the steering wheel hub. The idea was you'd shift gears with your thumb while keeping both hands on the wheel. Sounds convenient. But drivers constantly hit the wrong button while trying to honk the horn, accidentally throwing the car into reverse or neutral at highway speeds. The electric motor that shifted the gears was buggy and unreliable. Mechanics had never encountered anything like it and had no clue how to fix it. Assembly line workers reportedly found the system so confusing that quality control went completely out the window. The Teletouch was dropped after one model year, but the damage to the Edsel's reputation was already done and irreversible. Number 17. Goodyear Illuminated Tires. In the late 1950s, Goodyear unveiled what they called one of the most dramatic developments in tire history: glowing tires. Made from translucent synthetic rubber with internal lights, these tires could be tinted any color and literally illuminated the road beneath the car. Goodyear drove a white Dodge Polaris convertible with glowing red tires through downtown Miami, and traffic literally stopped. Pedestrians gaped in amazement. A Chrysler with illuminated wheels rolled through Manhattan, drawing crowds at Times Square. Goodyear actually predicted that women would soon want tires matching their wardrobe and hair color. Their press release genuinely suggested one woman might tell another, "My dear, green tires just don't do a thing for your complexion." The tires never reached mass production because translucent rubber was far less durable than standard black rubber. Manufacturing costs were astronomical, and regulatory agencies had absolutely no framework for dealing with glowing wheels on public roads. A gloriously ridiculous idea that quietly faded into history. Number 16. The Ford Nucleon. In 1958, Ford unveiled a scale model of the Nucleon, a car powered by a miniature nuclear reactor mounted in the rear. They promised an astounding 5,000 miles between reactor refueling stops. You'd theoretically drive coast to coast without stopping for gas, then swap out the reactor core at a service station. The problems were, shall we say, extensive. A nuclear reactor small enough to fit in a car couldn't actually sustain a reaction without weapons-grade materials. No shielding technology existed that was compact enough to protect passengers from radiation. A rear-end collision would have been, to put it mildly, an event of regional significance. Ford never built a full-size working prototype. The Nucleon remains a scale model at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, a perfect monument to 50s optimism smashing headfirst into the laws of physics. The concept also conveniently ignored the question of what would happen during a routine fender bender with a nuclear reactor in the trunk. Some questions are better left unasked. Number 15. Swivel bucket seats. Chrysler thought entering their massive land yachts was too undignified, so they engineered swivel seats. When you opened the door, the front bucket seat swung outward, letting you slide in gracefully. Marketing targeted women in pencil skirts and men in Sunday suits who couldn't maneuver into cars with giant fins and low rooflines. The concept actually worked, sometimes. But the mechanisms wore out fast. Springs weakened, leaving seats wobbling during sharp turns. Pivot points collected dirt, making the swiveling action progressively stiffer until the seat eventually froze in place. The setup added weight and complexity to already over-engineered vehicles. Today, swivel seats live mostly in medical transport vehicles and accessible vans, not exactly the glamorous future Chrysler had in mind. Number 14. The Otronic Eye. In the early 50s, Cadillac introduced the Otronic Eye, An automatic headlight dimming system, a photo sensor on the dashboard detected oncoming headlights and switched your high beams to low. Pure genius in concept. One problem, the sensor couldn't distinguish headlights from any other light source. Street lamps, neon signs, reflective road markers, even the moon on a clear night all triggered the system. Your headlights would flicker on and off like a disco ball through any well-lit area. Cadillac tweaked the sensitivity dial for years, and both Ford and Chrysler released their own versions, but the fundamental flaw remained unsolvable with 50s technology. Most manufacturers dropped it by the 70s. Cadillac stubbornly kept it alive almost until the 90s. The concept was genuinely ahead of its time. It simply needed about 60 years of sensor development to actually work properly. Number 13. The in-car toilet. In 1947, Cadillac installed a working toilet in a car to complete a 10,000-kilometer non-stop driving challenge. And while that was a stunt, the idea of car toilets was seriously discussed by major automakers throughout the late 40s and early 50s. The engineering challenges were exactly what you'd expect. Finding space for a toilet and waste storage tank was nearly impossible. Splashing, spraying, and general mess during driving were horrendous. And the smell in an enclosed cabin? Absolutely unbearable. In 1954, a businessman had a custom Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith built with a toilet beneath the rear seat, officially labeled a champagne cooler, with a mechanism that emptied contents directly onto the road while driving. Eventually, the automotive industry reached the revolutionary conclusion that pulling over at a gas station was just easier for everyone involved. Number 12. Excessive chrome overload. If one single thing defined 1950s car design, it was chrome. Everywhere, on everything. Grills, bumpers, door handles, window trim, fender skirts, hood ornaments, rocker panels, wheel covers, dashboard knobs. If a surface existed, someone slapped chrome on it. The 1958 Buick Limited was essentially a chrome sculpture that happened to contain an engine. American manufacturers were locked in an arms race of shininess, each trying to out-bling the next. All that chrome was extraordinarily heavy, hundreds of extra pounds doing nothing for performance, handling, or fuel economy. Chrome trim pieces dented easily, rusted from the inside in humid climates, and replacing one damaged strip often meant disassembling half the car. Chrome also reflected blinding sunlight into other drivers' eyes. By the early 60s, the excess became embarrassing, and designers scaled back dramatically. But for one glorious, ridiculous decade, subtlety was considered a dirty word in Detroit, and more chrome always meant more class. Number 11. Dangerous hood ornaments. 50s. Hood ornaments weren't subtle badges. They were three-dimensional metal sculptures with sharp points and protruding wings, essentially turning every car into a rolling medieval weapon. Cadillac had its swooping V-crest. Buick had its gun sight ornament. Pontiac had its illuminated Indian chief head. These gleaming metal figures sat at pedestrian chest height, announcing your car's arrival with zero subtlety. People struck by cars with protruding ornaments suffered significantly worse injuries. Children were particularly vulnerable because the ornaments sat right at their head height. They were also easily stolen by teenage vandals and souvenir collectors. Ralph Nader's landmark safety work highlighted how these decorative features were essentially decorative spears. Safety regulations eventually killed them off. Today, only Rolls-Royce retains a traditional ornament, and it automatically retracts when parked. Number 10. The retractable hardtop. The 1957 Ford Skyliner featured a steel hardtop that folded and retracted into the trunk at the push of a button. Genuinely magical to watch. The mechanism required 7 electric motors, 13 switches, countless relays, and over 600 feet of wiring, all using 50s technology, barely reliable enough for basic automotive functions. When it worked, it was spectacular. When it didn't, which was frequently, repair bills approached cardiac event territory. And there was a massive trade-off. The retractable mechanism consumed virtually all trunk space. Owners could have a convertible or carry luggage, but almost never both simultaneously. The system was also extraordinarily heavy, dragging down both performance and fuel economy. Ford kept the Skyliner going for 3 model years before acknowledging that a simple fabric convertible top was the superior solution. Number 9. Front bench seats in performance. Cars. Bench seats in a family sedan made perfect sense. 3 across, room for everyone. But in the 50s, manufacturers put bench seats in everything, including their sportiest, most powerful models. You could buy a big block V8 Oldsmobile rocket with enough horsepower to rearrange your internal organs and still have a flat, unsupported bench seat that sent you sliding from one side to the other every time you turned a corner. No lateral support, no headrests. During hard braking, the driver slid forward on the slippery vinyl. During acceleration, backward. The passenger beside you was essentially a loose projectile with no restraints. Whiplash in rear-end collisions was virtually guaranteed. Bench seats persisted because they were cheap and because drive-in movie culture demanded that romantic slide-across maneuver. It took seatbelt laws and basic physics to finally push them out of performance vehicles. Number 8. Partitions between front and rear seats. Being stuck with screaming children on a long 50s road trip was exactly as miserable as it is today. Several automakers tried solving this by installing glass partitions dividing front and rear cabins, like a limousine minus the luxury or chauffeur. In practice, it was absurd. You couldn't pass snacks, toys, or anything that might actually quiet children. Communication required rolling down the partition, which defeated the purpose, or shouting through glass. Air circulation was badly compromised, making the rear compartment sweltering or freezing. In accidents, the rigid partition became a dangerous impact surface for rear passengers flying forward. The concept never caught on outside actual professional limousines. For regular families, the best solution to noisy children remained what it has always been: threatening to turn the car around. Some problems just don't have engineering solutions. Number 7. The Cadillac Cyclone's radar nose cones. In 1959, Cadillac's Cyclone concept featured twin nose cones housing actual radar sensors for collision avoidance. While 50s drivers relied solely on mirrors and shoulder checks, the Cyclone attempted to pioneer crash prevention. Impressive sounding until you examine the execution. The radar equipment required massive nose cones that made the car look torpedo-ready. The system detected large objects directly ahead, but was completely useless for anything approaching from the side. The nose cones also housed the headlights, meaning the entire front-end design was dictated by bulky radar equipment. The car also featured a silver-coated bubble canopy and electrically operated sliding doors, a technology demonstration that primarily demonstrated how far technology still needed to go. Number 6. Ashtrays and lighters for every passenger. Smoking was so thoroughly embedded in 50s culture that car manufacturers treated it as essential, right alongside steering and brakes. Every car came standard with ashtrays and cigarette lighters for literally every seating position: dashboard ashtrays, door panel ashtrays, armrest ashtrays, seatback ashtrays. Some luxury models featured individual lighters per passenger because apparently waiting 30 seconds for someone else's lighter was unbearable. Ashtrays featured elaborate chrome accents and even illumination for nighttime smoking convenience. Decades-old tobacco residue is still the bane of vintage car restorers today. The sheer engineering resources devoted to ensuring every passenger could conveniently poison themselves simultaneously is a perfect time capsule of an era that never questioned that particular habit. Number 5. The bathtub. Nash Motors pursued aerodynamic styling with a devotion bordering on religious fervor. Their fully enclosed wheel openings and bulbous rounded profile earned the immortal nickname Bathtub Nash. Designers claimed huge aerodynamic benefits. They conveniently failed to mention that the shape generated dangerous lift at highway speeds. The car literally wanted to fly off the road, which is exactly the opposite of desired automobile behavior. Enclosed rear wheels made tire changes a nightmare, requiring removal of inner fender panels. The body trapped engine heat, causing constant overheating. One journalist described it as a bar of soap equipped with windows and wheels. A cautionary tale about falling so deeply in love with a theory that you ignore every single practical consequence staring you in the face. The bathtub nickname stuck permanently, and Nash spent years trying to live it down before the company eventually merged with Hudson to form American Motors in 1954. Number 4. The joystick steering control. General Motors' 1958 Firebird 3 replaced the steering wheel, brake pedal, and gas pedal with a single joystick. Push forward to accelerate, pull back to brake, tilt to steer. GM envisioned simplified driving accessible to everyone. The reality was genuinely terrifying. A tiny miscalculation meant the difference between gentle braking and slamming passengers into the windshield. No force feedback meant zero intuitive sense of how much input you were giving the controls. Decades of muscle memory built around steering wheels and pedals would need complete relearning. GM also included an autonomous guidance system, essentially admitting that the joystick was probably too dangerous for unsupervised human use. The concept stayed permanently in the concept stage. Number 3. The Edsel Speed Warning Speedometer. Ford's Edsel came loaded with innovations nobody asked for, and perhaps the most baffling was the speed warning speedometer. Drivers could set a desired speed limit, and when they exceeded it, the speedometer dial would glow red. That was the entire feature. It just glowed. It didn't slow the car, didn't sound an alarm, didn't do anything useful except change color, assuming the driver was actually looking at the speedometer, which most speeding drivers definitely are not. The concept assumed people exceeded speed limits accidentally and would self-correct upon seeing a red glow. In reality, most speeding is completely intentional. The technology itself was unreliable, sometimes glowing at random speeds or failing entirely. Just another Edsel feature solving a problem that didn't exist. Number 2. The Do-Re-Mi musical chime. 50s accessories catalogs offered gadgets ranging from mildly useful to completely insane. The Do-Re-Mi sat firmly in insane territory. This music box attached to your car door and played a tune every single time the door opened. Choose from Ave Maria, Let Me Call You Sweetheart, The Anniversary Waltz, or I Love You Truly. Now imagine hearing Ave Maria every time you open your car door at the grocery store, at a gas station, 50 times a day. The novelty would survive approximately one afternoon before you'd want to rip the thing off with your bare hands. The mechanical spring gradually wound down, distorting the melody into something resembling a horror movie soundtrack. Sold for $4.98 through J.C. Whitney, the Do-Re-Mi represented the 50s accessories market at its most gloriously, spectacularly pointless. Number 1. The gas turbine car engine. At number 1, the most ambitious and arguably most stupid automotive concept of the entire decade. Multiple manufacturers, led by General Motors, poured millions into developing gas turbine engines for passenger cars, essentially jet engines crammed into automobiles. The Firebird 2 featured a full gas turbine encased in a titanium body with cooling fins, managing the extraordinary heat output. And extraordinary doesn't begin to cover it. Exhaust temperatures could literally burn anyone standing behind the car. Fuel economy was abysmal, because turbines must run at constant high speeds, making stop-and-go driving catastrophically wasteful. Spool-up lag created dangerous delays between pressing the accelerator and actually moving. The engine screamed at a pitch that made normal conversation inside the car absolutely impossible. And yes, they ran on everything from gasoline to kerosene, which sounds impressive until you realize that flexibility came from the engine being essentially an industrial furnace on wheels. Chrysler actually placed turbine cars with real consumers for testing in the early 60s. The public response confirmed what engineers privately knew. Gas turbines were spectacular technology that was spectacularly, fundamentally, hopelessly wrong for everyday automobiles. It remains the ultimate symbol of 50s automotive thinking: bigger, louder, hotter, and absolutely convinced that the most extreme idea in the room was automatically the best one. And there you have it, 25 of the most ridiculous, impractical, and gloriously stupid car features the 1950s ever produced. An entire decade where the car industry had more money than sense and more ambition than common sense allowed. Which one of these features surprised you the most? And which one do you secretly wish had survived? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this ride through automotive insanity, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.